So in the honor and the spirit of the fun Immaculate Grid game, for those of you that are not playing Immaculate Grid, it's simple. It is a grid where you might have teams on the left, you could have teams on the top in the stats, and you got to match the grid. For example, maybe somebody that played for the Browns and the Bengals, we're going to do a fantasy football happy hour Immaculate Grid where it is Barry, me, Jay, and we have to guess who each other's predictions are for fantasy QB1 of the season, RB1, wide receiver 1. We will go in order on this exercise. So, Jay, you and I need to make a prediction of who Barry is picking this year to finish as his QB1. I will give the floor to you, Jay Croucher.
Oh, thank you, Connor
Yes.
Rogers.
We can work as a team, but...
Yeah. I mean, I think the safest option on the board is Patrick Mahomes, just in terms of just the floor that he is going to give.
This is Barry's brain,
I
not
know,
Jay Croucher's brain.
Barry does like to swing for the fences. I think there's some more Justin
Worked
Fields
for him
equity
last year.
Than one might expect. I mean, we could just go look at his rankings, but that's not as fun of an
No,
exercise.
and I didn't, yeah.
Yeah, and I deliberately didn't either. But I would say Mahomes.
You're going to go with Mahomes? Yeah. I think he's going to double down on Jalen Hurts here. I think he's going to go. I know that was his ride or die last year. I think he's going to predict Jalen Hurts for another monster year. So you're going with Mahomes. I'm going with Jalen Hurts. Drum roll here. Barry is predicting his QB1 on the season to be, and I truly don't know right now. I have to wait for the animation, which is maybe a bad move.
Yeah, there he is, Jalen Hurts.
Like,
nice call.
It looks like
nice call, Connor Rogers. That's right.
There we go, Jalen Hurts. I consume your content, Matthew Berry. Absolutely. So
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming to NBCSports.com, rotoworld.com.
It's a great place to be.
He's a ride or die for a reason. He's a ride or die for a reason. Look, everyone is back, right? It's still a great offensive line. It's another year of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith there. Goddard is back healthy as well. Oh, by the way, I would argue that their running backs are even better. They added a great pass-catching running back in DeAndre Swift. Rashad Penny is a guy that can take a swing pass and take it to the house as well. So I would argue that their team is as good, if not better, than last year. To me, Jalen Hurts, because of the rushing and the ability to throw down the field in terms of the weapons he has, it's close. You can make the argument for Allen or Mahomes, but I'm riding or dying once again with Jalen Hurts as my QB1.
You worried, Matthew, at all about the rushing touchdowns? We had 13 of them last year. Do you think that's sustainable? Because that would probably be the one thing with Hurts that is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. I mean, if I was projecting it out, I would think he would have less. I think he'll have less rushing touchdowns this year, but I think he's going to have more passing yards and more passing touchdowns. Again, remember last year was his first year with A.J. Brown, right? It was only his second year in Sirianni's system, and so now I think he's got the big contract. It's his third year in the system. Everyone's, I mean, I feel like last year was sort of trying to prove himself. So this year I think even more confident. So, yes, I do think the rushing touchdowns regress a little bit, but I don't think the rushing does. It's still just such an important part of his game, and I do think he'll make up for that with more passing volume, both touchdowns and yardage.
All right, next up is my QB1. So, fellas, you get the floor to try to predict this one.
Okay, so I've put myself into Connor Rogers' head. What do I like to do? I like to wear tight T-shirts.
Yep.
Like to leave clubs at late but mostly respectable hours. Like to obsess about the New York Mets. I think that all adds up to. I think you'd go Jalen Hurts as well, actually.
Wow. Okay, Barry, do you think I would copy you like that with the Jalen Hurts pick?
No, I don't think you would. I could see you going with Herbert because you're kind of a surfer. He's kind of a surfer. You guys both kind of have that, that California vibe. I could see you going to Aaron Rodgers just to suck up to your SNY family.
That's fair.
They're probably feeling jealous because you spend more time with us than you do with them. So I could see you, trying to get in good with number 8 over there. But you know what? Listen, I think you're going to say Mahomes. I think you're look. I mean, Mahomes is the obvious guy. I think you're going to say Mahomes.
Barry thinks I'm going with the obvious pick, and that would be wrong because I went with Lamar Jackson. I am a big believer in Todd Monken being hired away from Georgia. I think he'll be able to have a career year as a passer, while I think hopefully he stays healthy enough to be an effective runner and playmaker. And they finally got some talent around him. I know Odell Beckham is not the Odell Beckham of old, but you have Zay out there right now. You have effective tight ends. I don't think the backfield does enough for me that this is going to be Greg Roman's Ravens. They turn around and run the ball 800 times. So It's all about health with Lamar Jackson, but based on talent and how much the offense has changed, I'm really excited about him this year.
Yeah, and I think Lamar Jackson is more likely to have the season that everyone thinks Justin Fields is going to have than Justin Fields, because Lamar Jackson he's just better at football than Justin Fields until proven otherwise.
All right, Jay Croucher's QB1.
You know what's interesting is I was just going to say, I had Lamar Jackson in my mind, but that's who I thought Jay was going to pick, was Lamar Jackson.
I do like Lamar.
Because I agree with everything you just said. I mean, the concern is the health with Lamar Jackson, but I have Lamar Jackson at 4, which is higher than consensus. He's just, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, like, I think he's going to have a monster season.
Barry, who do you think Jay is rolling with? I feel like he might have gave it away while trying to guess yours. He went into his own mind. So I'm leaning Patrick Mahomes here, but do you agree?
I would think Mahomes. I would have said Lamar Jackson just because I know he loves Lamar Jackson.
Ride or die last year.
As well. I know he loves Justin Herbert. But I'll say Mahomes. Jay is an odds-based guy. You know, he loves his Vegemite. He loves ruining movies. But he also, he loves what's the odds-on favorite, and Patrick Mahomes is the odds-on favorite to finish as QB1 because he's the best quarterback in football, period.
Jay Croucher, your QB1 is?
It's Patrick Mahomes, but just love how the synapses in Matthew's brain works to go from he's an odds-based guy, he loves Vegemite. Very strange linkage there, but that's okay. With Mahomes, I think I can see the argument for Hurts. Lamar has the upside. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, I think are in that mix as well. But I think Mahomes, he just has clearly the highest elite floor. And I think that he plays a less brutal, maybe injury-susceptible game than someone like Hurts or Allen. Mahomes hasn't missed a game the past 2 years. Hurts has missed a couple each of the past 2. And Mahomes, I mean, I think that, with a lot of this stuff, we go out of our way trying to find new guys. Mahomes is just the best quarterback. Right. I think by himself, he's in his own tier. Just as a football player, it's not always the same as fantasy, but I think Mahomes, he's still got very solid O-line. He still has Kelsey. He has enough, I think, lottery tickets at receiver that he's going to make one of them work. And also, the thing with Mahomes, too, is I say this all the time, it doesn't caught on the way I would like it to, but he is defense agnostic. Just does not matter what defense you throw at Mahomes. The Eagles had an elite defense. Mahomes had one leg and still was scoring on every single drive in the second half of the Super Bowl. He's just a freak, and he's my QB1.
As we move over to the running backs here, we will start with Barry once again here. Jay, this one, a little bit more of an open field. Felt like with quarterbacks, we came back to the same 4 names over and over again. With running backs, a little more wide open. We had some turmoil already this week with Jonathan Taylor's situation in Indy, who would be in the running for this. Josh Jacobs is not at camp. Good news is Saquon Barkley is back. Who do you like as your prediction for Barry's RB1?
Yeah, I think Barry would be tempted to go with repeat friend of the show, Austin Eckler, but
too.
I think Mr. Barry will ultimately wind up with Christian McCaffrey.
Okay, all right. I was going to go with Austin Eckler here, but McCaffrey definitely the betting favorite on the board. Barry, take it away. Who is your RB1 heading into your prediction for the season?
It's about what's going to ultimately happen. And I have Bijan Robinson.
Wow.
Oh,
as
hello.
My RB, as somebody that I think will potentially finish as RB1. He's my RB3. Remember, last year, the Atlanta Falcons led the NFL in running back rushing yards. They had the second most running back carries, and that was with Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier. Right? And so now you go out and you spend an early round pick on Bijan Robinson, a top 10 pick. Think about Arthur Smith when he was in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator and how much work Derrick Henry got. 718 touches over 2 seasons with Arthur Smith calling the plays. I don't know. To me, Bijan Robinson is just a special player who can touch the – and he's so much more versatile than Derrick Henry. Honestly, he's more versatile than Cordero Patterson, and we saw how creative they were with Cordero Patterson, who was a top 10 fantasy running back 2 years ago under Arthur Smith. And so given the investment that team has made in the run game, in their offensive line, and Bijan Robinson's versatility, because he's not only a great between the tackles runner, but he is somebody that can line up as a wide receiver. He's got soft hands. He can be a big part of the passing game as well. Desmond Ridder, not the strongest arm in the NFL. I think Bijan Robinson's going to touch the ball early and often, no matter what the score is. And so even although Arthur Smith will drive us crazy a little bit, yeah, in terms of, give me Bijan Robinson.
Well, I know we're going to get to this, but Bijan at Croucher Bet just moved into -150 to be Matthew's ride or die if he's got him as RB1, but we'll touch on that later. I agree, Matthew. I think that
But the premise of hang on for a second. I want to be clear here, though. The premise is like who might finish RB1. It's not who you have ranked number one. You don't have to rank a player. I want to be clear about this because I think this is important. You don't have to. A player doesn't have to be ranked number one or be drafted number one at a position to finish number one at the position and be worthy of that number one spot. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so Justin Jefferson, just to give an example, right? Justin Jefferson is ranked number one at wide receiver, not only because he is an elite player, but because barring an injury, he's going to finish as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Like, it is well within, there's no range of outcomes where Justin Jefferson isn't a top 5 fantasy wide receiver barring injury. And so again, part of what's getting baked in there is safety, right? And so, anyway, that's just but the premise of this exercise is who do we think is going to finish as the number one, not necessarily who we would take number one.
Yeah,
I want to clarify that.
You can
or at least that's how I
here.
understood it.
Yeah, absolutely, you take bigger risk here. I mean, I picked Lamar Jackson to finish as QB1. There is not a great floor all the time with Lamar Jackson because of health, which brings us to my running back one prediction to finish as the top dog this season, Jay.
Yeah, well, I know you're very much on the Bijan train as well, so that was going to be my guess, and I'll stick with it that you're going with Bijan.
Barry, where do you think I'm going?
Where are you going? You like the young guys, so I mean, could you go Jamar Gibbs? I'm going to say you'll go with Tony Pollard.
Okay, I went with Bijan Robinson as well. I believe this is the rare repeat here. I back up everything Barry said. You already see it in camp. Bijan is an excellent route runner. They're going to flex him out to the slot. They're going to hand him the ball inside, outside. And as much as we cannot have faith in Arthur Smith to do right for us in fantasy by Kyle Pitts, we can absolutely go the other way with the trend of running backs. When you look at Arthur Smith's history with workhorse backs, they used a top 10 pick on this guy. He's special. And I really want to pull out something that you said, Barry. This offensive line is vastly underrated. They are an excellent run blocking unit. They've graded out as a great run blocking unit. Chris Lindstrom might be the best guard in football that nobody talks about. I think Bijan's in for a mammoth season.
Yeah, and I think if you were to pick any single team in the league for Bijan to go to in terms of just producing fantasy value this year, I think you'd probably choose Atlanta over any other team. Because, I mean, you just look at what Tyler Algier did last year. 1,035 rushing yards, 210 carries in a legit timeshare. And Tyler Algier went over 1,000 yards. So I think that with Bijan, I mean, it's not that complicated. He's the best running back prospect out of the draft since perhaps Adrian Peterson, if not early. Saquon Barkley would be the other candidate there, I think. And now he's going to an elite run-blocking offensive line with a coach who's just obsessed with calling run plays, for better or worse. So it's a dream situation for Bijan.
All right, Barry, that brings us to Jay's running back pick here. Are we going back to maybe what we like to say the betting favorite, or do you think he went a little off the board here?
I think he probably went Christian McCaffrey. I think he went with a betting favorite.
All right, I'll go with Austin
Eckler.
Eckler. Before the turmoil this week, part of me wanted to say Jonathan Taylor. I know you were buying back a little bit on a Taylor rebound after the dip came. Jay, where'd you go?
I went for neither of those guys. I went with the guy who's currently going RB6, and that's Nick Chubb, who I think is gone a little bit under the radar. I know there's some sentiment out there that this is going to be more of a passing offense. But I think there's something strange with that where, if it is more of a passing offense, if they commit to that, if that is going well, that means that it's going to be succeeding, and it means that they're going to be more explosive offense. It means that they're going to be in scoring position more often. I think that Chubb can compensate with more touchdowns for perhaps less carries than he might get. But I'm not even convinced he's going to get less carries because Kareem Hunt's not there anymore. I think that Chubb, who's in previous years seen more like 60% of carries in action, I think that could trend to more towards 75, 80%. I also just think he's the best pure runner in the NFL. Just like clockwork, every year when he is healthy, you're looking at 1,400 yards, you're looking at 10 to 12 touchdowns, and I think he's got more upside in the receiving game as well. So I think Nick Chubb is being very slept on, Connor.
Barry, you like that scenario where Chubb finishes as RB1? Can you envision it at least?
I can, because honestly, like I have Chubb higher than consensus in my ranks, and I agree. I think the Browns offense is going to be very fantasy friendly. They're going to go 3 and 4 wide. They're going to be passing a lot, which, by the way, will open up running lanes. Think about how many crowded boxes Nick Chubb has had to run against, how many 8-man fronts he's had to run against. And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to be able to play that way against Cleveland this year. Nick Chubb, who I think you can make a strong argument is the best pure running back in the NFL. Just forget fantasy. Just, from a pure skill standpoint, it's the best running talent-wise in the NFL. And so is a scenario where he gets less touches this year, but is much more efficient with them and winds up with 18 touchdowns because they wind up on the 3 and 5 yard line all the time. Absolutely. So I like the call there with Chubb. I believe I have him at running back 6. So I'm pretty high on Chubb. I've seen him go outside the top 10 among running backs. I think Chubb's in for a big year. I like the call.
So we will close this out with our wide receiver 1 predictions here, Jay. Our last Barry prediction for this one. We know he kind of mentioned the floor of Justin Jefferson, but you can take a little bit more risk with this exercise. I would say this would be the most difficult Barry prediction for me. I'll go chalk, though, and go back to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I'm going to go Justin Jefferson as well. I think that when you just look at the year that he had last year, again, one of the great wide receiver seasons of all time, I think he's the call here.
Barry? The big reveal.
It's not him, and I thought one of you would have guessed Cooper Kupp, although obviously the injury news is a little concerning. I went to Jamar Chase, who last year had a 29% target share. He averaged over 11 targets per game. He led all wide receivers in red zone targets per game. He gets over 21 fantasy points per game when he sees at least 7 targets. I mean, he's just, he's an incredible player. It's a hot team. It's a great quarterback. Obviously, there's a real connection between Burrow and Chase. I have Chase as my number 2 running wide receiver in my rankings that we talked about in the Cup segment, so I don't think it's that much of a stretch. But yeah, give me Jamar Chase.
A team that's in a brutal division, as you and I were discussing before the show. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. Chase, just a freakish talent as well.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Chase, which people might not necessarily think about as much, is that this is only his 3rd year, so he still has skill upside to come in ways that guys like Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, who are 29, 30, that they don't. Like, those guys are largely finished products, and also they don't have the quarterback situations clearly that Jamar Chase has. So he has, of all these guys around the top of the board for wide receivers, I think he has the most upside in terms of going to another level.
All right, so that brings us over to my wide receiver 1 prediction for the year here, Jay.
Yeah, I was still taken aback by your Lamar Jackson call, so maybe you've got a sneaky one up your sleeve, but I think you will have gone Justin Jefferson as well.
All right, Barry, prediction from you?
Yeah, I was going to say I think you'll say Justin Jefferson as well, but you know what? Just to make it interesting, maybe you'll go with friend of the podcast, CeeDee Lamb, or as I like to call him, 8.
So you do like to call him notoriously. You're both wrong, but definitely a little bit of a surprise pick here. I'm going with Stephon Diggs, who had a fascinating spring, a lot of mystery, but some of my friends in Buffalo have told me this is the best start to a camp he's ever had. With Diggs, this is somebody every time there's a little bit of friction, it feels like they overcompensate to get him back in the fold. He is fully back in the fold. Josh Allen's a great talent. Yeah, they're going to be working in Dalton Kincaid targets to this offense. There's no doubt about that. But we know that takes time with a rookie tight end, and maybe having a viable power slot will actually open things up for Diggs a little bit more. So this is by far my most risky pick. But I think while everybody's nervous about the weird Diggs spring, I think he's going to have a massive season in that Buffalo offense, as he often does.
Yeah, I think the good thing with Diggs as well is that there's probably a bit more stability in having a high touchdown total than perhaps Jefferson or even Chase have, where Diggs, he just plays in such an explosive offense. That offense has such a high floor. You always worry about Buffalo guys second half of the season playing cold weather, going into the fantasy playoffs, but at the same time, like Diggs, he's got 15 touchdowns, 1,600 yards. That could absolutely be in play.
What do you think of Diggs this season, Barry?
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think they'll overcompensate a little bit, and they'll want to make it right with Stephon, and he's going to want to prove it. He's got a chip on his shoulder. When he came from Minnesota to Buffalo in the first place, he had a chip on his shoulder, thinking that he was a number 1. Buffalo didn't treat him like a number 1 wide receiver. Obviously, he proved that he was. And then you think about this Buffalo offense, as explosive as it is. Gabe Davis is unproven. Dalton Kincaid is unproven. Dawson Knox is a tight end. They got some nice moments from Shakira last year, but honestly, it's it's a high-octane offense that doesn't have nearly as much target competition for Stephon Diggs as you might think. So I certainly think it's within the realm of possibilities that he finishes as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy.
That was my line of thinking. There's no T. Higgins. We'll see how much Minnesota gets Jordan Addison involved, kind of a running mate like that. He just hasn't had that established guy yet. Our last one here, Barry, Jay's wide receiver 1. What's your final prediction for our Immaculate Grid?
Jay always likes to go with the favorites. So I'm going to say Adam Thielen. I'm going to say that Jay has predicted Adam Thielen. Bryce Young and Adam Thielen, just a massive connection there. Who would Jay like? That's a good question. Again, Jay's going to take Justin Jefferson because it's the odds-on favorite.
I don't think you are, but I don't think we'll have a repeat here. I wanted to lean Chase. Man, I think you'll still. I want to lean Cooper Kupp. Now we'll go a little bit off the board here. I'll say you go with CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I actually went Donovan Peoples-Jones. No, I went with Tyreek Hill, and the reason why is that here's what he did last season. 1710 receiving yards, second in the league. 119 receptions, second in the league. 170 targets, third in the league. He had an incredible season. He was, towards the end of the year, favorite for Offensive Player of the Year before getting edged out by Justin Jefferson. And he did all of that when a lot of stuff went wrong for Tyreek. He was banged up at the end of the year. He was limping around some of these games at the end of the season. And then Tua Tagovailoa, I think Tua closed 11 games last year. He had 400 passing attempts. For context there, Joe Burrow had over 600. So I think that Tyreek, he's the best wide receiver in football. I think that's probably an unpopular opinion. Most people would have Jefferson, Kupp, or Chase. But I think Tyreek, the way that he stretches the field, just the threat of his speed, I think he is the most impactful wide receiver in football. I think that's reflected in his stats as well. I think on average, Tua is going to have a healthier season. They're going to have an insane offense, and I think that Tyreek, he can flirt with 2,000 receiving yards. So Tyreek is the guy for me.
Tyreek Hill.
I like that. Yeah, I like that call. I mean, honestly, and Tyreek has even said that's his goal this year is 2,000 yards. And so, look, it's the second year in the system as well. I mean, that's the thing that you have to remember. I'm always a believer in, the more familiar you get with the system, the more you understand it, the more it's just, it's back of the hand to you, right? You just know it, I think helps. And so having a full offseason once again to be in McDaniel's system and coming up with new ways. They've added more speed in the offseason as well. Like, defense coordinators are going to just have a nightmare trying to figure out how to defend the Miami Dolphins this year. So I like the call, Jay. Not bad.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you to you and all the books behind you.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.